Okay, I did a video called What Every Christian Must Believe, and now this is going to be called What Every Christian Must Do. And again, this is from, like in the last video, an old Ukrainian Eastern Rite Catholic prayer book, which I found. I find a lot of good prayer books. So, and I love sharing them because most of you would never experience these things, because these books can't be found any longer. Okay, what every Christian must do. And it goes through various things. Every Christian, in order to attain life everlasting, must worship God as his first beginning and last end. This worship is to be rendered first by faith, which makes both the understanding and the will humbly adore and embrace all those truths which God has taught, however obscure and incomprehensible they may be to our weakness. Secondly, by hope, which honors the infinite power, goodness, and mercy of God and the truth of his promises, and upon these grounds raises the soul to an assured expectation of mercy, grace, and salvation through the merits of Jesus Christ. Thirdly, by charity, which makes us love God with our whole hearts for his own sake, and our neighbor as ourselves for God's sake. Fourthly, by the virtue of religion, the chief acts of which are adoration, praise, thanksgiving, oblation of ourselves to God, sacrifice and prayer, which ought to be the daily employments of a Christian soul. We must flee all idolatry and all false religions, also superstition, under which name are comprehended all manner of divinations, all fortune-telling, all witchcraft, charms, spells, observations of omens, dreams, etc. All these things are heathenish, contrary to the worship of the true and living God, and to that entire dependence which a Christian soul ought to have on him. But we must devoutly honor the ever-blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of God, the holy angels, and the saints reigning in glory, whose intercession we shall always most profitably invoke. We should likewise duly reverence all sacred emblems and pious memorials of our Lord and his saints, and honor the relics of God's servants, whom Holy Church has canonized. Okay, that's the first thing, right? So we have to honor God and not put anything in front of him. And all this fortune-telling stuff, it's got to go out the window. Don't practice any kind of occult thing. Very dangerous. You will have a demon following you, guaranteed. That's a door. You're opening a door. Don't go near it. God is the only source of truth, the only one. And of course, they tell us here what every Christian must do. You have to believe in God, the true God, one God, and God is love. And you must, of course, not get involved with false religions. And there are many false religions on this earth. And I'm not going to say it on the video, but you can figure them out. These are religions that advocate violence. They're special. Everyone's, scum except for them. These are false beliefs. Okay? Our religion is about love. It's the only religion about love. Okay, number 2. We must reverence the name of God and his truth by a religious observance of all lawful oaths and vows, and by carefully avoiding all false, rash, or unjust oaths and blasphemies. Of course, not using the Lord's name in vain, and don't say you're going to do something when you don't do it, and don't swear by God. Don't swear. Okay? It's a bad habit. 3. We must dedicate some notable part of our time to his divine service, and more especially consecrate to him those days which are ordered by his church to be sanctified or kept holy. Well, you have to make time for God, so you have to make time to go to Mass. Protestants go to a service. We go to Golgotha. We go to the crucifixion every time we're at Mass. Very different. 4. Under God, we must love, reverence, and obey our parents and other lawful superiors, spiritual and temporal, and observe the laws of the church and state. We must have a due care of our children and of others that are under our charge, both as to their souls and their bodies. That's important. You as parents are responsible to instill a belief in God in your children. If they decide to change later, well, that's their business. But you have to give them that upbringing. The father really is the priest of the household. He is the priest of the household. But the mother should be there, backing him up in what he does. And really, it's the father who's supposed to bring the young ones to the altar every Sunday, or to make sure that the family goes. But, that's in an ideal world. I understand that doesn't always happen. 5, we must abstain from all injuries to our neighbor's person by murder or any other violence, and from all hatred, envy, and desire of revenge. God will get revenge. It's not your business to get revenge. As also from spiritual murder. And it says it in the Bible, by the way, about that. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, right? Not yours. As also from spiritual murder, which is committed by drawing him into sin, by words, actions, or bad example. Meaning, you cause somebody to sin. That's called spiritual murder. Because you could drag them down. Okay? 6, we must abstain from all uncleanliness in thoughts, words, or actions. Of course, to the best of your ability. It can be hard to control thoughts. But just don't, if filthy thoughts come into your mind, that's fine. Just don't grab them and start going with them. Let it pass. Let it pass. And try to keep your words clean and your actions. 7, we must not steal, cheat, or in any other way do wrong to our neighbor in his goodness and possessions. Don't take what's not yours. God will give you what's yours. We must give everyone his due, pay our debts, and make restitution for all damages which we have caused through our fault. Yes. 8, we must not wrong our neighbor in his character or good name, meaning lying about someone, by calumny, detraction, or rash judgment, or in his honor by reproaches or affronts, or rob him of his peace of mind by scoffs or contempt, or of his friends by harmful gossip. In all cases, whoever wrongs his neighbor is obliged to make reparation or satisfaction. So just, give your neighbor a fast shake. 9 and 10. As we are commanded to abstain from all deeds of lust and injustice, so are we also strictly obliged to restrain all desires of these kinds and to resist the irregular motions of concupiscence. Meaning, being lustful, where you want to sleep with prostitutes and you're married but you want to have an affair outside your marriage, whatever. Being overwhelmed with sexual lust. If you're married, be satisfied that that's your marriage, okay? And work on that as opposed to going outside of marriage. And if you're single, well, you shouldn't be going with prostitutes. This is what they're saying here. Concupiscence is the sexual desire. So, besides all these duties enjoined on us by the 10 Commandments of God, which are a summary of the whole eternal and natural law, every Christian is also bound to keep the commandments of God's church. 1, we must sanctify Sundays and holy days of obligation by attendance at Holy Mass and by resting from servile work. So try to spend a day, Sunday, if you can, not working too much. Okay? If you can. But I know some people have to work, of course. Hospital workers, firemen, cops. I get that. But they mean if it's unnecessary. 2, we must strictly observe those days of fasting and abstinence appointed by ecclesiastical authority, like when we, fast for Lent and give something up. 3, we must humbly confess our mortal sins at least once a year to a priest having competent jurisdiction. Example, approved by the bishop of the diocese. So we should confess our mortal sins. And those are ones that break any of the 10 Commandments. And really, it says once a year is the minimum, but it really should be done sooner. Because God knows what could happen, right? It's best to always be in a state of grace. You never know. 4, we must be careful to make our Easter duty by receiving Holy Communion at some time during the interval between the first Sunday in Lent and Trinity Sunday. 5, and you should receive communion, of course, after you've gone to confession. and there's no mortal sins. You can receive with venial sins, but not mortal sins. 5. According to our means, we must contribute to the support of those who minister to us in spiritual things. Meaning, we should financially support our church. Like I support my church because I know the money is being used in my church. You know, we get the stairs fixed. We had a new air conditioner put in. We know that the priests, you know, have to eat, etc., etc. And you know, I know they don't have a lot of money. I know that, and we have to support them. We have to keep the lights on, so we can make sure that when we go there, you know, we can have the mass. 6. We must not marry non-Catholics or anyone related to us within the 3rd degree of kindred. They're talking about marrying too close in cousins, okay? Cousins have married, but they're discouraging that. And that's simply, you know, biological thing, right? Because it can cause birth defects. We must not marry clandestinely, meaning you don't elope, nor solemnize marriage within the prohibited times. Meaning don't get married when you're not supposed to during the year. You know, get married when the church allows and when you can get, you know, the service. And this whole thing about marrying non-Catholics, well, you know, it can be a problem. It can be a problem because if you want to raise your kids Catholic and then your spouse doesn't, like I know situations where, I'm not going to mention, but I know skit situations where one was Catholic, the other one was Muslim, and the Muslim wouldn't let the Catholic woman baptize her children, even though she wanted to. So, you know, you get situations like that. That's a problem. She didn't want to disobey her husband. And then the kids suffer because now they can't be baptized. So that's why it's discouraged. It's better to marry within your own religion. But of course, there's marriages between Catholics and Orthodox. It's very close, and the differences are very slim. So that's probably more likely to work, as opposed to a Catholic and a Muslim, or a Catholic and a Jew, or something like that, because they're radically different religions. But that's for you to decide. Okay. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and have a nice day.